Streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and blasttheradio.com, this is The Lowell Green Show. The number to call and be heard around the world is 613-413-2217. Or email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. And now, here is Lowell Green.
Well, at long last, we've got a politician out there who has come to his senses. Pierre Poilievre says as Prime Minister, he will scrap the carbon tax completely. Hallelujah. Now, he says that scrapping the carbon tax will at least help to lower the cost of living. Now, we live in Ottawa. It's kind of bubbly here. People aren't affected, or for the most part, nearly as much as many other parts of the country. So I'd be interested to know if the cost of living is of any concern to you, or if, as many public servants, the higher the cost of living, the higher your salary, and you sort of welcome it. By the way, talking about the cost of living, you paid, what did it cost you to tank up that big giant tank of yours this morning?
Yesterday evening. I got a deal, Lowell. Before gas shot up to 176, I got it at 157 something last night. It was $150
to tank up your truck.
Yes, sir.
You realize that we are now almost at $8 a gallon?
Right.
Remember when we used to sell this stuff by the gallon?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if anybody would have the nerve to place on their pumps $8 a gallon. I don't think so. I don't think so. It's quite astonishing what's happening here. But so Pierre Poilievre, at long last, has come out. He's the only politician that I can think of who has actually had the guts, I believe, the common sense, and not only that, but the information necessary to decide, you know what? Carbon tax is a mistake. Carbon tax is not working. In fact, I challenge any of my listeners out there to tell me what jurisdiction anywhere in the world has seen emissions decline because of a carbon tax. There may be one, but I haven't been able to find. We've had carbon taxes around the Western world now for about 6 or 7 years. I see no evidence anywhere, including here in Canada, that a carbon tax of any kind has lowered emissions. In fact, even during the pandemic, when a lot of factories and other manufacturing was shut down, we still saw carbon emissions continue to climb. In fact, the only place in the Western world where carbon emissions have declined is the United States of America, which does not, N-O-T, have a carbon tax. Figure that one out. Now, Pierre Poilievre, I suspect, has read my book. He has a major feature in my latest book, because in my latest book, I do a good deal of research on what is being done at two world-class universities, Berkeley University in California and MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Both of those universities are doing groundbreaking work, research work, on how to lower or, in fact, render CO2 emissions, carbon dioxide emissions, either inert, in other words, totally harmless, or actually convert them to useful fuels. MIT, for example, and I detail this at some length in my book, MIT, for example, has been able to discover, now let me just back up a little bit. We've known for a long time how to extract CO2 from the atmosphere. I mean, it's done all the time. That's CO2 that's in your Pepsi, that's in your in your Coca-Cola. If you buy SodaStream, if you got one of those SodaStream machines, the carbon dioxide, that's extracted from the atmosphere. So let me just say, we know how, and we've known for some time, how to extract CO2 from the atmosphere. In Saskatchewan and Alberta, to an increasing degree, they are taking CO2 out of the atmosphere, lowering emissions greatly, and they are putting it into underground storage. And one of the amazing things about CO2 is over time, in underground storage, it turns to stone. Did you know that? It does. It turns to stone. In other words, totally harmless. But the exciting news, And very clearly, Pierre Poilievre is aware of this. The exciting news is, particularly at MIT, they have already been able to extract CO2 from the atmosphere, and through science technology, they have been able to convert it into a jet fuel. Believe it or not, a jet fuel that works very well and has no emissions itself. The only problem is that the problem now is to do this in large enough volumes to make it economically feasible. That'll only be a matter of time. So what Pierre Poilievre has said is, look, if I become prime minister, and God, I hope he does, I will scrap carbon tax immediately because, he says, obviously referring to what's going on at MIT, he says the answer to emissions is not taxation. The answer is technology, or if you prefer the term, science. He couldn't be more correct. I once again, I challenge you. Tell me where carbon tax has worked. It does not work. One of the purposes of carbon tax, which, by the way, Trudeau, and believe it or not, even with soaring inflation that we've got now, Trudeau is going to increase the carbon tax again in about 3 weeks' time on April the 1st. I mean, to me, as far as I am concerned, that is an act of a guy that's become unhinged. But at any rate, the problem, as I say, is not how to remove it from the air. We know how to do that. But this really exciting stuff is we are now able to, and soon I think we'll be able to convert it into a useful fuel. The science is the answer, folks, not taxation. So I'd like to hear from you what you think. Is this the correct move, or are you one of those? It's not that. The reason I'm asking is it's not that long ago when even I assumed that nobody could get elected in this country unless you agreed to a carbon tax. This is what happened to Doug Ford. Doug Ford immediately, originally said he was not going to have a carbon tax. Excuse me. But then with the polling and the media and so forth, he decided, you know what, if I don't come up with some form of a carbon tax, I'm not going to get elected. I suspect that feeling has begun to change, that increasingly people are saying, you know what, carbon tax is not working. Not only that, in many ways, it's very destructive. We can't afford it. And I think there's also another feeling, and I'd like your sentiments on this. I have a feeling that there is a growing sentiment in much of the Western world, certainly here in Canada, that a lot of the fear mongering over global warming has been greatly, greatly exaggerated. I think most thinking people agree that the planet is gradually warming. It's been warming for the past million years since the Ice Age. I mean, the glaciers, at one point, there was a glacier more than a mile high over where I am broadcasting, where you're now sitting, John, over a mile high.
That's why it's so cold in here.
That's right. The Ice Age. It melted and formed the Champlain Sea, and we still have fossils all over the place we see from the ocean creatures. So gradually, the planet warmed up again a little bit and continues to warm up very, very gradually. But whether we humans actually are speeding this process up, I am beginning to really wonder. It may be a little bit, but I'd like to tap into your feelings. Has it been greatly exaggerated? Is there really this great rush? I mean, now almost 25 years. I don't know if you realize it or not, but it's almost 25 years now that we have been warned constantly that next year is the last. We've got another 6 years. Al Gore, in his famous documentary or whatever the hell it was, said that the Arctic would be totally ice free by 2013. That's 9 years later. In fact, right now, there is a larger area of ice over the Arctic than we have seen for the past 16 years. So, and you know what? The next thing is we were told and are still being told, well, the oceans are rising, all the melting glaciers. And the latest concern, the oceans appear to be lowering a little bit. There's now concern that, geez, you know what? The oceans seem to be lowering a little bit. So why? if in fact we're not nearly as concerned about global warming, we think it's really, really been exaggerated right out of space. Um, and carbon tax doesn't appear to do anything to lower emissions, even if it was concerned. Then why are we doing it? And the other, there's more evidence. I mean, one of the main purpose of carbon tax, which, as I say, is going to go up again on April 1st, one of the main purposes is to force us, supposedly, to buy more electric cars, smaller cars, and drive less. How's that working? Geez, not too good. About 5 million new automobiles were sold in Canada 2 years ago. This is the last year for which I have figures. About 5 million new cars sold. Only 5% thereabouts were electrical or hybrid. Only about 5%. Now, as far as buying smaller cars, you know what the number one vehicle sold, excuse me, last year in Canada was?
Dodge Ram, baby.
The pickup truck.
Yep.
Do you know what the number two seller? SUVs.
Yep.
When was the last time you saw one of those little smart cars driving around? Well, once in a while, but very, very so. Look around you the next time you're out on the roads. How many small cars are you seeing out there? Some automobile dealers have stopped making the traditional sedans, the sort of standard size cars. Everybody's buying bigger cars and trucks. So, and we've had carbon tax now for what, last 6-7 years? So it doesn't appear to be working very well there either. So what do you think? What's your view here? A couple really issues here. How serious do you really think global warming is? Has it been vastly exaggerated? Is it worth driving the cost of living to a point where many people have got to go to food banks? Is it really worth that? Does it pose that kind of danger? There's also, of course, the fact that because we have concentrated in recent years so much on so-called green energy, windmills, solar panels, we have ignored real needs concerning healthcare. And in no small way, we have aided and abetted Putin. I saw a really clever line the other day. While we banned plastic straws, Putin was expanding pipelines and getting a larger and larger market share of oil and gas throughout Europe. We haven't been able to sell our gas and oil to Europe. Europe could desperately use our gas and oil right now. They've got to buy from Russia. They got to continue to fund Russia and its vicious, murderous attack in the Ukraine. One of the reasons is because the environmentalists, Justin Trudeau, have refused the right of Canadians to export our oil and gas in the name of we got to fight global warming. I think it's just beginning to dawn on a lot of people the terrible, terrible price the world has paid to fight global warming rather than real today's problems. That's a fact, folks. We have spent billions, nay, hundreds of billions of dollars in Canada alone, so-called green energy, while our healthcare system has been crumbling, while Russia has taken over in larger market share, etc. So I'd like your views here. Is Pierre Poilievre correct when he says he's going to scrap carbon tax entirely? Do you believe that science is the answer, technology, that sooner or later we're going to learn how to either neutralize, well, we know how to neutralize CO2. Buried in the ground, it turns to stone. That neutralizes it. So what's your feeling here, folks? John, once again, tell people how to get in touch with us.
Absolutely. So we invite your phone calls. First and foremost, 613-413-2217. Yesterday, we set a record for the number of phone calls on the show. That was fantastic. Yep. 613-413-2217. You can text as well. Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, whatever social media platform you are on, you can post where you would ordinarily post. We'll pop them up on the screen. And I'm cutting and pasting as quickly as I can so I can read some of your comments to Lowell, which is my main purpose for being here in the first place. So when you're ready, sir. You ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go. Peter says Pierre has the right idea. Lisa has a couple of posts in. She says it's crippling so many people just trying to stay afloat and keeping bills paid. Maybe living off the grid is best. Move out to the country, raise some chickens, live off the land. Seems like the best way to keep liberals out of my wallet. And she
let me just comment on that.
Yep.
Yeah. try buying land now. Where are you
What?
going to get
Yeah.
where are you going to get the money for that? And by the way, raising chickens is not all that easy, okay? Believe me. Go ahead, John.
Just getting some more comments together here. Anne says if Pierre Poilievre runs on getting rid of the carbon tax, he will win. People are losing their sympathy with this climate change religion once it hits them hard in their quality of life the way it is now. We're looking at $2 a gallon by April, folks. As usual, this solves nothing except impoverishing already low income.
Hold it just a minute. Folks, we're approaching $8 a gallon and not $2. I think you're talking about $2 a liter. we are now very close, do the mathematics, to $8 a gallon for gasoline in Canada. Go ahead, John.
They're having a good chuckle at your comment about buying land. Kim says, Pierre for Prime Minister. Yay. Eileen says, my husband and I are in our 80s and own our house, and we don't want to lose it paying more darn carbon tax for lowering emissions, and it does nothing.
Let me just say something.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
No problem.
I have to be very honest. I've worked hard all of my life. So has my wife. We've done well. I've got a number of books sold. But so I have no pension, as many people who were entrepreneurs. We managed to save some money, but I'm going to tell you something. If I had known I was going to live this long, I think I would have saved more. It's. Let me just give me some personal information. I need some hearing aids, so my wife tells me. So I went for the test on Wednesday. That's why I wasn't on the air. I had to order 2 new hearing aids. $5,500, not covered with OHIP. Now, I guess I have enough money. I mean, $5,500, not easy to come up with, but we will. But I guess my point is, like, how does the blue collar worker, the average person, how do they afford? I mean, I guess if you're just an average Joe, you just got to walk around deaf because you can't afford a damn hearing aid. It's $8 a gallon for gasoline, and this son of a bitch of a prime minister we've got. I'm not backing down on that comment. Is going to increase it even more come April the 1st. I mean, this borders on madness. It's okay. All right, you've got a protected pension. Your pension is tied into inflation and so forth. But that's a small percentage of Canadians. I just don't know how the average person lives in it. And they tell me that by the end of this year, the cost of food will go up another 30%. God knows where the price of gasoline will go. And a great deal of this to fight global warming. And we've just had the coldest January and February in the past 22 years. I mean, geez, when does some people around here in charge start to make some sense? I mean, it's okay for Trudeau. I mean, Trudeau's worth, what, millions? Tens of millions? I don't know. Daddy's money. Mommy's money. That's no problem. Bad problem for him.
And he has government benefits, too.
Government benefits. And by the way...
and a pension.
By the way, my understanding is, I could be wrong on the dates, but I know that carbon tax is going up on April 1st. I believe that is also the day that every single member of parliament gets another raise. This will be the 3rd raise for members of parliament since the pandemic started. Public servants, not one single public servant in this country at any 3 levels, municipal, federal, or provincial, has lost their job, while hundreds of thousands of ordinary people, welders and plumbers and electricians and pipeline workers, lost their jobs or had their salaries reduced. How about workers in restaurants? How about restaurant owners? But no public servant has lost their job. They have had 2 increases in salary since the pandemic. And you know what? And you wonder why the trucking convoy came here? And we now have a witch hunt. Anybody that supported them, a witch hunt underway. I know I'm branching out into different, but folks, there's trouble in the land, and we seem to have a government now that just doesn't want to recognize it, and in fact is just going to exacerbate it. I have to get a word in here for Shields.
Yes, you do. JF just chimed in to remind you that it's time for a Shields
For
plug.
Shields, for Shears.
Thanks, JF.
Oh, okay, folks. If it's appliances, if it's T-bone steaks, Shields and up there in Pakenham is a great place for it. And I'm really pleased. I still keep hearing from people who have dealt with Shields and said, Lowell, we'd never heard of Shields before. We listened to you. We took your advice. We got our appliance from there. Some people got almost completely refitted the kitchen, and Shields did it. One of the things that I forgot to mention this recently is that depending on what the appliance is, the driver who brings you, for example, a refrigerator, will remove the old fridge and then install the new and plug it in for you. Now, obviously, if if you're talking about a new oven and so forth, you're going to need an electrician in all probability to come in, or perhaps a plumber. They won't do that. But for regular installations, the driver will do that. It's just one, and no charge, just one little extra service from Shields. Shields.ca. Good people, good prices. John, back to you, my boy.
Peter says, good deals and great website at Shields. There you go. See, they're listening to you, Lowell.
Thank you.
If the opposition parties would just go back, conservatives, change would happen now, says Gregory. Let me see here. Cost me $150 to fill my tank in my work van, says Mike. Guess I'll have to pass the buck. On a good note, we are over 100 watches on Facebook right now. Well, we're closer to 200. And the podcast numbers are huge. Thank you for sharing this on your timeline. Okay, back to your comments. Coraline says, I remember being told in the 70s that another ice age was coming and we would have to melt the polar caps to survive.
Actually, that's very true. I spend a lot of time doing research on various topics. And I have some documentation. In fact, I have some publications. Time magazine had a major feature. I forget the exact date, but in the 70s, about dreadful pictures of icicles and so forth. The great ice age reoccurring, and then 10 years later, out comes it. Well, it's not an ice age actually. It's the planet's going to burn up. How many years have we now been told that we only have another 5 years? I can remember Elizabeth May with tears in her eyes. This is desperate. This is an emergency. We only have 6 years to do it. I mean, that was about 15 years ago. She said, the city of Ottawa declared a climate emergency. Remember that? But they got a climate emergency. Oh, jeez. Go ahead, John.
Over to Cheryl on Facebook, who says climate change has always happened from the beginning of time itself. It's always in flux.
Very true. Very true.
Absolutely. Every mountain, every river, every ocean carved out because of climate change.
Have a look at the Grand Canyon.
Yes.
Carved out by a tiny little river.
Go stand at some of the cliffs in my beloved New Brunswick or Newfoundland. How do you think
actually, you know what? You don't have to go to the Grand Canyon. The St. Lawrence, for example, is carved out by retreating.
Sure.
What am I talking about here? Go ahead.
Ice flows.
Ice flows, yeah.
Yep.
Glaciers is the word.
Oh, I was wrong. I'll go to my room. Robert says Pierre should also make the OAS tax-free to help seniors during these high taxing times. A small help that seniors would appreciate. Michael says, I've been an auto tech for 35 years. 20 years ago, 15 minutes in the shop, car running, you were dead. Cars nowadays, we run them all day in the shop and not get sick. Carbon my ass, says Michelle. And says, I can't wait until we're told we had the warmest January on record. It was like Moscow in Ottawa in January. So I will laugh out loud. The one should have transpired, blah, 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 blah. All right.
Daniel. Actually, that's very true. I am really, really surprised that we have not been apprised by the United Nations something or other that January was the warmest month on record. By the way, we haven't heard any reports lately about declining ice in the Arctic. I already said this. Do the research. You will see that there is more ice in the Arctic right now, yesterday, than we've had in 16 years. And by the way, Antarctica, the ice is now at an all-time high level. They have never seen so much ice in Antarctica since we began to measure the amount. It's quite astonishing. Go ahead, John.
Kim says $8 for a butternut squash. I won't be eating that again because this will only get worse.
A butternut squash. Oh.
DB asks, how come CFRA doesn't have a simple pension plan for you, Lowell?
Well, because this was my choice. I'm an entrepreneur. I never believed in the necessity of pensions. I always felt that I would work hard and use my brain, and I didn't need that. I was an entrepreneur, so they in fact hired my company, etc., which is absolutely my choice. Go ahead.
There you go. I had one with them, and I was given the whole lot when I was bought out. Text at 613-413-2217. Trying to cut CO2 is a fool's errand. The fact is that the Earth is still in an ice age. We are in an intergalactical period of the late Cenozoic Ice Age. CO2 levels were only this low once before at the end of the... Come on, you're killing me with the words here. Carboniferous period. Plants are strained at the current low CO2 levels, and the planet is normally much warmer. Somebody very intelligent is using big words on me here, Lowell, on a Friday. The nerve. It just jars me, says Darlene, to know that the MPs keep getting raises while everyone is either losing their jobs or their restaurants. The MPs make enough as it is and don't do much to warrant.
Let me this business of oceans rising and falling. I've told this story before, but it's absolutely true. There are some people listening now who have been to the ancient city of Ephesus. In the Bible, it's who was it? To the Ephesians. Ephesus was a major city during biblical times. Now, Ephesus was a port city. It was built on the ocean. Guess how far Ephesus today is, by the remains of Ephesus, is from the ocean? About 2 miles. So very clearly, at one point, the oceans were much higher than they are now. Go ahead, John.
I'll try and master English before your very ears. Here we go. Danielle says, in the future, we'll have the technology for terraforming, so pollution will be a non-issue. Rick says, carbon tax is working for Trudeau's plan to buy his elections. Satan's Playmate is on Twitch. She says, the ice in Antarctica and Iceland is not decreasing because of climate change, but volcanic activity. Peter says, carbon tax is another liberal scam. It is as harmful to the economy as COVID. It's a $1 trillion worldwide scam. Al Gore and carbon credits, LMAO. Remember acid rain? He's laughing at that. Gina, I believe this is the first time we've heard from you. Welcome to the show, Gina. Hope you'll share this with your friends. She says, and what, pray tell, is Junior flying to Europe for? Why not meet by computer? And how can he continue his constant flying and justifying raising our carbon taxes? Yeah, I'm waiting for those electric planes. Those would be fun.
One of the things I'm noticing here, we're getting some very good comments, and thank you. But there doesn't appear to be that much concern over the cost of living. I know I've thrown out a number of topics, but
government town, right, Lowell?
Yeah, I just want to remind. I mean, good for you if you've got a government pension. Good for you. Worked hard for it, and this is part of the deal. I have no problems with that at all. I just want to point out that this is not typical of the rest of the country. I was raised for a good chunk of my life in the little town of Orillia and Brantford, Ontario, and I can tell you that if you go to Brantford, you're not going to find this kind of feeling in places like Brantford. Many of my family are still in London, Ontario. You go to London, and you will see a city in distress. So we're lucky here in Ottawa, no question about it. But the rest of the country, certainly sections of it, not nearly so well off. Go ahead.
All right, let's go to David. Says British Columbia has had a higher carbon tax than the rest of Canada, $2.09 a liter today for gas. The price on pollution tax only extracts cash from your wallet.
By the way, I have to laugh. One of the reasons that the cost of gasoline is so high in BC is because almost all of the gas they have comes through the existing Trans Mountain pipeline, which is just too small to supply Vancouver's needs. And Vancouver, BC, as you know, fought against doubling the size of the Trans Mountain pipeline, still is fighting it. So the main reason that BC people have to pay so much for gasoline is because they fought against bringing more gasoline to their province through Trans Mountain. So to me, you know what? It's karma. Karma. You got what you deserve. You fought Trans Mountain. You continue to fight Trans Mountain. You've cost us billions of dollars in your fight, and you're now paying the price because you don't have enough gasoline, because the existing pipeline bringing Alberta oil and gas is not enough to supply you. That's why your prices are so high. Good on you. I hope the damn price goes up to $5 a liter out there. That's kind of mean, but I think it expresses my sentiment rather well. John, we're right out of time. I want to thank you. I want to thank my listeners. Some good comments today. And once again, folks, the only means we have of spreading the news here, this is one of the last really conservative talk shows left in the country. And if you think that, even if you're a liberal or NDP and you think that free speech should live, one of the ways to spread the news is just simply share it. Really easy to do. You just push share and more people find us. Thank you very much. We'll be back Monday.
The Lowell Green Show is seen and heard live around the world at 2 p.m. Eastern. Connect with us online at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. Can't join us live? Download the Lowell Green podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and more. Ask your smart speaker to play the Lowell Green podcast. This is a production of blasttheradio.com.